Welcome to the ACC Panic Room alongside Lauren Brownlow. I'm Joe Ovies. When Brownlow's not watching the sports ball, she's watching trash reality television. Are you watching Survivor again?
Listen, there is a season airing as we speak.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Wednesday nights.
Uh-huh.
So yes, I am watching the season, and I would say honestly, of the reality shows, that's probably like upper tier in the class department. If we're being fair, like
Okay.
that's like an Emmy-winning show. It's an interesting show. It's like highbrow reality.
It's had a long run. I mean, I remember when Survivor debuted after a Super Bowl like 20 some odd years ago, whatever that was. I was very excited about that.
Fun fact: Jeff Probst hasn't aged since then, so
It is wild how he hasn't aged.
not at all.
That is pretty wild. Although recently a Survivor episode had an ACC tie.
Yes, I didn't know this until after the fact because one of my front runners, honestly, to win the whole show this year
Mm-hmm.
was named Lindsay, and she was on the tribe that was dominating. They had never had to vote somebody out. And then the first time they had to vote somebody out, the way they edited it anyway made it so it totally seemed like she just suddenly got paranoid for some reason. It was like, is it me? Is it me? Is it me? And everybody's like, it's not you, but it might be now. And then it was. And then I found out I was reading something about her later, and she went to state, she said. And I was like,
No,
oh no.
no. NC State this year alone, NC State has like the both ends of the spectrum.
So she's getting it too.
You got Abby Lampy, who won the cheese rolling competition earlier in the year. She's been celebrated, and she's been at NC State. It's been great. And then you got the other end of the spectrum. You got the paranoid state grad who gets kicked off Survivor. But that's kind of like where things are right now with the Wolfpack. It's this is why the Triangle is the most unique area compared to other places in the ACC, because you have a week of what now for the Wolfpack, right? Devin Leary's done for the season. They lose to Syracuse. This window, this team that was positioned as like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to win the Atlantic Division. Oh no, we keep butting heads with Clemson and the rest of the league. There's 4 teams in the ACC that are ranked right now. Or I'm sorry, no, is it 3 out of the Atlantic, and then no, all 4 from the Atlantic. My bad.
No, Carolina's right now.
That's right. Carolina's ranked now too. So my point is that there's a lot of teams ranked in the Atlantic, and there's not a lot of teams ranked from the Coastal, and this is what we always have to deal with. Curse you, Carolina! Because now things are looking up for the Tar Heels, both in football when it comes to the Coastal Division, and oh, by the way, basketball is positioned as the preseason AP Top 25 with a awesome SI-inspired image, Photoshop, that the Carolina basketball Twitter account had put out earlier this week. I loved the homage to the 1981 SI cover that they did with Hubert Davis.
That was really well done.
It was incredibly well done. Incredibly well done. Regardless, this is kind of where things are right now in the Triangle. Everybody's really, really worked up about how Carolina, everything comes up for them.
I mean, I guess, but they've still got to do it. And the thing is, like, and everybody's like, oh yeah, the Coastal's set up great. Here's the thing about that. Sure, you've watched Carolina this year, though. Are we sure they're not losing any of these?
Yeah.
I'm not. Like,
Yeah.
My issue with this year and the way it's been talked about between the divisions is not that it's not lopsided. It is. And you have every right, if you're in the Atlantic, to say that.
Mm-hmm.
But it has been set up at times as if like any Atlantic team that's in the top 25 would win the Coastal by several games. And I'm like, don't know about that, y'all, but whatever. They like Wake might. I would give Wake that, other than Clemson, obviously. Clemson might win both divisions by several games. We don't know yet. In fact, I think it's likely that they do, right? But whatever. I'm just saying, like, it's like people talk about it like FBS versus FCS. But I presume was a state fan saying I was trying to dress up the Coastal for saying something 2 weeks ago similar to what I just said, and then said that I was doing it for Drake May's Heisman campaign when my tweet didn't even mention. I'm like, what is going on right now?
I think that's a case of people being extremely online. I know it's been discussed. When you look at what Drake May's been able to do offensively, his comparables to other potential candidates, you would go, yeah, okay, I could see why Drake May is a potential Heisman.
Stat-wise, yeah.
Stat-wise, but it's not just about stats, and that also gets back to your point, the one that you've been making to me. And I know I never listen. You keep pointing out to me that you can't trust Carolina. They're going to do something to show you that this is why you couldn't trust them. And look, I'm with you. My issue is I look at the rest of their schedule, And while they do technically
look at
have
Notre
difficult
Dame.
games,
Look at what Notre Dame did to them.
I know
It's not always transitive, but like I'm just saying.
Could Pitt do that to them? Entirely possible. I would imagine that the Wake Forest North Carolina game is going to be a full-on track meet.
Oh, yeah.
And who knows the state of NC State at the end of the season going to Chapel Hill? That might just be,
right.
Given the way that things might be going for the Wolfpack without Devin Leary, that might just be the game they pour it out for.
Exactly.
To kind of like salvage a season. Because there's any number of ways
that becomes easier to set up for Dave Doran at this point, I feel
easily.
Oh, yeah, everyone thinks they should win. We could ruin everything for them, maybe, depending on what their situation is. And they have nothing to lose at that point, so 100%.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. But I get where the Drake May Heisman talk is coming from when you look at it stats-wise. However, it goes way beyond just the stats. All right, one other football item before we move to basketball because of the AP preseason top 25. Syracuse has been an absolute joy to see. Like Dino Babers, things were down for Dino Babers last year. This has been the bounce back years of all bounce back years. And they're riding high off of a top 25 matchup win against the Wolfpack. Now they got the next test. They've got Syracuse on Saturday. I don't know what to make of this game. I don't think Syracuse can pull it off, but then again, I didn't think Syracuse was going to pull it off against the Wolfpack's defense.
Here's the thing. I think Syracuse football this year is almost analogous to Drake May in the sense that their tougher games are ahead of them. So we still have a lot TBD. Like, yes, Drake May's very good, but like we can't be trotting these stats out just yet, considering, he's got plenty of football to play and a lot against better defenses than he's faced so far. On that, Mr. Twitter Mention and I are on the same page. So we're in agreement there, buddy. But with Syracuse, it's just weird. Like, I'm not saying they're not good. Like, they're good. Yeah. But how good is my question? Like, I still feel like we don't know that yet. And I'm not saying that because, like, I don't know. I know maybe I'm trying to nitpick where there's not room to. But at the same time, it's like, what's their most impressive win before State? And with State was against a team that, without Devin Leary and was kind of their first full game without him and stuff. They did have a week to game plan, but whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, can they move the ball well? Yes. Do they have a pretty good defense? Yes. But how does that translate? And obviously this week's going to tell us a lot because, like, remember, they struggled with Virginia at home. Like, I still don't know what to make of them.
I don't think it's going to translate well against the Tigers. I know that the Florida State game ended up looking a lot closer than it actually was, but in the course of that game, Clemson absolutely put the hammer down. And what's the popular thing to talk about these days in football is the middle eight. If you read Matt Rule's Way of the Panther document, you knew the last 4 minutes of the half and the first 4 minutes of the second half, the middle eight, is this huge new trendy thing to do, right?
That was the only like innovating thing he said in there, honestly. Because at the time we weren't really talking about the middle eight.
No, you're right. So if you watch the middle eight, Clemson absolutely put the hammer down.
Oh my God!
On Florida State.
That was like the only portion of the game I watched, and I was like, "Good Lord, okay."
Yes. So I have a feeling that what we're seeing out of Clemson is funny. Clemson, I don't think, is on the level of the true college football playoff contenders. But this season has been the reminder season from Dabo and that group. We're still a step ahead of y'all.
Yes.
We still have better talent than you. We still, I believe in my system, and we can also out-coach you. So I do think that that's what Clemson's season's ultimately been about. To put it in wire parlance, we're taking back our corners in the ACC. You had your one shot last year. Congratulations to Pitt, but we're taking back our corners. State, you got us at home, taking back our corners.
Yeah.
Which gets us to a larger picture. I still don't think that Clemson is in a college football playoff contender role, despite the fact that the ACC has these top 25 matchups that they're actually winning, because we've got the SEC Armageddon situation that might unfold, thanks to Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee, where they could all enter the end of the year with one loss.
Could, but that's my thing with them, though. I think undefeated Clemson, they could still even get better than they are. Like, they've just continued to get more impressive week by week. They're getting healthier too on defense, which I think has helped. Do they have limitations? Sure. But I mean, if you were objective and looked at Alabama this year, do they have limitations? Yes.
Clearly.
Like, and that's not to say that they're not still really good, but like if you're going to put Alabama in the playoff because they're Alabama, you at least have to consider giving Clemson that same courtesy is all I'm trying to say. Like,
I'm with you on that.
Because Alabama has a lot of flaws. They just have, Bryce Young. And so that's helpful. And DJ Uiagalelei has gotten way better. The offense seems to kind of be finding its footing this year. And like I said, it's like week by week, they're getting better. That is kind of a hallmark, I feel like, for a lot of Dabo's teams, especially lately, that they kind of improve as the year goes on. And so I think that they could still impress people down the stretch with what they do. And I think that an undefeated Clemson, I don't think that they would get shut out. I think that they would have to look pretty ugly down the stretch to get completely shut out, but we'll see. I mean, I also think, like I said, Alabama has visible limit. Georgia's the one team for me that I'm like, no, they're just a machine. Like, they will murder you. And so, not to say Tennessee's not really good. They are. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, to me, Georgia's the one team that I look at right now, and I'm like, oh, they're like Alabama levels of.
Yeah, they're somewhere else.
I'm just saying, like that. To me, that's the one team that's different than everybody else. But we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. I think Clemson, is getting better, and I think they could continue to impress people, and they're going to get some benefit of the doubt.
We'll wrap on basketball. The AP preseason top 25 came out. Carolina slotted at number 1. I saw that the ACC preseason media awards came out. Did I read this right? There was one person who did not vote Armando Bacot for ACC first team. There was one.
First team?
First team.
I don't know.
I think there was one. Which, what are we doing? What are we doing? Come on now.
Because if he somehow plays terribly this season, then that guy gets to say, I told you so, because that's fun.
It's the dumbest thing ever. The question is, can North Carolina actually complete the mission? Are we seeing a redemption part 2? Because we saw this 16-17. Carolina, up until, the last few minutes against Kansas, very much in the back and forth before Kansas eventually pulled away. And they've got that taste in their mouth. They want to come back and do it. You got this whole run it back situation with some key parts that are missing. Pete Nance is coming in, Brady Manick is out, etc. Are we seeing a 16-17 part 2 for this Tar Heel team?
I mean, maybe, but it is hard to do. Let's not forget. That's not an easy thing to do. But it's hard for me to discount it being a possibility, considering the way the end of last year played out. You and I were both talking about it on Panic Rooms each and every week. It was like, how are they still doing this? And they just really flipped a switch towards the end of the year there, and in the postseason, they were really, really good, towards the end of the year and into the NCAA tournament. And you kept thinking, surely they're not going to get out of this jam, and then they would. But
they did.
And then the Duke game was so wild to win the game at Duke and for Coach K's final game, and then to beat them in the Final Four. You were just sitting there how? Wow. This is crazy.
I do wonder, and there's only one way to find out. I do wonder how much of the underdog role versus how they're going to be viewed this year, right? Last year they were kind of wandering around trying to understand themselves, and then Hubert Davis found himself in a situation where he had no choice but to go whole iron 5, right? Dawson Garcia leaves the program for personal reasons. That puts Brady Manick in a position where he had to play more. He had to step up, and which he did. That's a credit to Brady Manick. And then I also wonder, and this is something that Gilliam and I have talked about, without going to Cameron, where they literally had nothing to lose, and they had everything, and Carolina and Duke was on the other end, how much of that was a springboard for them for what they did the rest of the way, right? And now that that's gone, how do you adapt? How do you convert yourself from everybody counted us out, we're shocking the world, to now there's the real expectation to night in, night out be that team? I'm curious. I don't know the answer. I'm not saying they can't do it. Right. I'm simply saying that there's a psychological element to this caught up in the hysteria of the rivalry stuff and what happened with Coach K, that we might be discounting how much of the role that had last year.
Yeah, there's probably some of that, but I think you could also make the case, too, if you wanted, that we knew they kind of had that level of talent in them the whole season. They just couldn't put it together. And I think that game and some of how they played down the stretch was it almost showed them that, oh, wow, we really can pull it together and we can, and this is what it looks like. And so I think some of the whole run it back element is probably part of that too. Like, I think we didn't see that team have fun a lot in the beginning of the year, I didn't feel like, but we did it towards the end. I mean, they were having the best time. And I feel like if that's the spirit they kind of go into the season with, and they recapture that part of their NCAA tournament run, I think that that's something that they can carry forward. But you're right. I mean, with expectations and stuff, it's different. But I do think that that kind of made them see that they could actually finish out games and that they could do it. And none of us were really sure before that.
No, we weren't. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the ACC Panic Room. We will see you all this weekend with the Syracuse Clemson game, an important matchup between Wake Forest and Boston College, so that Wake Forest kind of continue to be an intriguing team for our New Year's Six bowl game. All sorts of fun. Oh, yeah, and Duke at Miami.
We're really like putting in question whether Wake's going to beat Boston College?
No.
Okay. I was going to say Wake's earned that from us. Like, come on.
Yeah. We'll see you all this weekend.